Exports will continue to remain a key to increasing demand for U.S. beef. We have more in this week's Market Watch.
Market Watch, brought to you by Pfizer Animal Health.
Joining us in the studio is Rosa with the Livestock Marketing Information Center. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me today.
You bet. Well, talk to us a little bit about the numbers we just spoke of, a decrease in exports in 2009.
That's correct. 2009 was very challenging for the U.S. beef export market. The global recession weighed very heavily on consumer demand in many of our trading nations for beef products. Now, on a carcass weight basis, that's a tonnage volume basis, overall beef exports were down only about 1%. Again, that's beef only. It doesn't include the byproduct, the non-meat items. When those are factored into the equation, the overall tonnage did drop a little bit more. Now, on a value basis, the value of U.S. beef exports did decrease, as you mentioned earlier. But a good point of 2009 is the U.S. maintained its net exporter status. We finally regained that in 2008 after the BSC situation, and that's on a dollar value basis. So overall, we exported more beef and cattle on a value basis than we imported, which was still good positive news. Now, one of the key things about 2009 was Mexico, which is our largest trading partner on a volume basis. They account for about 1/3 of our total tonnage of beef exports, had a very severe experience with the recession. They experienced devaluation of the peso, and consumer demand was impacted very heavily. So that was a big negative draw on our exports. But by the end of 2009, exports started to increase to Mexico and things were looking better as we went into 2010. Also a good point on 2009 was we did expand our growth of exports into the Asian markets. So overall, on a tonnage basis and a value basis, our exports did decline in 2009. There were some hopefuls going into 2010. We saw improved exports to Mexico and other countries towards the end of 2009, and we continued year-to-year growth in our Asian markets.
I know in our industry there's a lot of debate and discussion about exports and imports and different trade policies and so forth. Why, in your opinion, is the export market so important to long-term demand growth for U.S. beef industry?
Well, it's very key. It supports not only the cattle market, but the beef market, because there's a lot of items that U.S. consumers do not prefer. They don't have a large taste for or a great demand for. Thus, they put a lower value on those items, such as a tongue or a liver or short ribs. And those products, however, are very highly regarded in other nations. Thus, they put a higher dollar value on those. So we have items that we export and we receive a higher value in those export markets than they do here in the U.S., which is a good thing because that higher value trickles down into beef prices, which trickles down to live cattle prices. In fact, non-meat items such as the byproduct value, the hearts, the tongues, the livers, actually support $1 to $2 to $3 or even more dollars per hundredweight to live cattle prices, depending on how much those byproduct values are receiving. So it's a very good thing because the higher values received support live cattle prices and beef prices here in the U.S.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot. Look into your crystal ball and tell me what you see for 2010 and beyond.
Well, things are looking pretty good for 2010. As I mentioned earlier, late in 2009, we saw some improved export growth to Mexico, and that also carried over to other trading nations. In fact, we saw year-to-year increases in the fall of 2009 in export tonnage. As well as we go into 2010, based on our preliminary weekly data for just whole muscle beef cuts, not including any byproducts or bone-in or boneless, just some whole muscle cuts, we're actually showing year-to-year increases in January and February. Now, granted, last year we did see some disappointing low export tonnage values last year, but still, the year-to-year growth that we've seen in our preliminary weekly export data is setting up a picture that things are looking pretty good. As the global economy improves, we're already starting to see some signs of that. That's supporting consumer demand, particularly in our export markets. So overall, exports should increase modestly through 2010. At the Livestock Marketing Information Center, we're forecasting a year-to-year increase of 2 to 3% in total beef exports over 2009. We're slowly getting to the level that we were at before BSC, but we still have a little bit more ways to go.
Well, that is good news, and if you keep bringing that good news, we'll keep having you back on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. For more insight and analysis from the Livestock Marketing Information Center, visit our website at cattlemen2cattlemen.org.